of issues to deal with, and one wonder what kind of disturbance or upheaval or changes could come about as a result of those residual problem or issues that we saw during the election. Cafe would have reported that a number of people were disenfranchised because they weren't able to poll their vote while they were in the line of at 5 o'clock. As a matter of fact, they reported that about 21% of the persons in those 400 plus polling stations that they had workers were unable to cast their votes. As to whether or not that would have changed the results or impact the election, then I'm not sure. However, it must be concerning nonetheless that one of the basic fundamental tenets of our electoral process is that once you're in the line at 5 o'clock, you should be afforded the opportunity to cast your vote. So persons were disenfranchised there. But there are other irregularities that we understand that have taken place during the election. And I am staying with this one because certainly I understand it's going to court, and the PNP will be having a press conference this morning, I think about 11:30. Maybe we'll be able to carry some things out of that press conference before we close the program out. But that West Central St. Andrew constituency that the Prime Minister is in, he was challenged by Mr. Paul Buchanan. It seems to be quite a bit of bother there. And I understand that the PNP is basically saying that they have an airtight, well, certainly the candidate, let me limit it to the candidate. The candidate believe that after discussing all the issues with his attorney, team of attorney, they have an airtight case. And they are basically preferring that on the basis that there has been a precedence there when the said Andrew Holness challenged the result then when Dr. Paul Blake came out the victor in that constituency, and subsequently he was awarded the constituency after some issues were resolved there. So I gather that now it is the flip side of it. And one of the things that we must be happy about and we must cherish is that Jamaica is not just run by men in a sense, but it's run by laws, because had it not been for the judicial system, then certainly anything could go. Maybe Mr. Holness himself would not be in Parliament because it would just be given to Dr. Blake without any challenge. But he believed that he had a case then, and he used the court to his advantage, and he got his day, his justice. Now, Mr. Buchanan and the PNP is saying that they now have a case. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one play out and what will trigger from there, because certainly, if this thing should go in the direction that Mr. Holness went, then it means that he would have to step down and a new person would have to be at the helm as the Prime Minister of the country. Now, from my understanding, if somebody take over as Prime Minister, if the person would not be duty bound to relinquish the position and give back Mr. Holness the position of Prime Minister. However, if the majority of persons in the House voted for Mr. Holness to return as prime minister, then he would be returned as prime minister. But these are things that we are watching in the court. And talking about court issues and saying that, Jamaica just don't run from men who their testosterone level seems to get ahead of them. And they believe because they sit in the ivory tower in high office, they can do anything. It leads us snap dab to the police force, the JCF, where the commissioner of police seems to have overstepped his bound once again, on the face of it, certainly. And this time it's against the chairman of the POA, the Police Officers Association, chairman, that's SSP Wayne Cameron. And he, of course, exercised his right and asked the court for an injunction, which the court in their wisdom saw it fit, and they granted the injunction. So there's a stay of execution on the commissioner of police, Dr. Blake, having his way. We understand that it will be aired in the court, the Supreme Court, on the 8th of October. So at this moment, it is business as usual for the chairman of the POA, SSP, Cameron. And, we are asking that persons who much is given to, much is expected. If you are behaving as if regulations and rules and so on don't matters, then how do you expect to police a situation and to implement the rule of law? Because certainly there's also questions about how the former Police Federation chairman, Rowan James, how he was treated. And right now, and I spoke to him quite recently on this program here, the court had basically ruled that he should get 99% of his salary. And that order seems to be ignored by the Police High Commission, certainly the Commissioner of Police. He is on 75% of his salary. And in our situation, when you have to be cutting and carving and so on, 99% of your salary versus 75%. It's a big ask. But I guess there are some people who are larger than life, and the court, not even the court, matters. And it's amazing that the court have not demanded that the judgment in terms of the ask for 99% of James's salary to be paid to him, that the police force carry out that action, or that, dictates that were given out of the Supreme Court of Jamaica. But I know that that matter is still in court, and a lot of question signs are there. One would say they are saving some money for Rowan maybe, but it's going to be very interesting to see what comes out of that. And with these kind of situations taking place in law enforcement, the police force, what it does is pitch people against each other. Because if the commissioner of police is acting ultra-virus and willy-nilly, then certainly that is going to leave a lot of bad blood there. Because no matter what, how will the relationship between SSP Cameron and Commissioner Blake. How will that basically pan out going forward? Will men be passing each other with stoned face? How will this affect the Jamaica Constabulary Force broadly? And certainly it will filter down, because you may have rank and file members who, just by way of how these men operate, some people may like the commissioner, some might like SSP Cameron, and that could filter and create some kind of negative scenario. What I understand is that Superintendent Cameron, or Senior Superintendent Cameron, seems to have the majority backing of the members of the association that he leads. So let's see how that goes. I want to move in another along the same trajectory in terms of leadership and so on, but this is different. Last night I watched All Angles and Television Jamaica with host Mrs. Diane Jackson Miller, DJ Miller. I watched the first part of the program with MP-elect Zalika Jess and MP-elect, and Zalika is down there in Northeast St. Elizabeth, Isaac Buchanan over there in Eastern Portland. And let me just say, for total clarity and so on, Zalika Jess is a very, very close friend of mine, very close friend of mine. For those of you who may not have known or even remember, she was also my co-host here for well over 2 years or so, Madam Producer, I think, well over 2 years, where she anchored the feature Legally Speaking and Talking Lands. Well, it was Talking Land before, and then we morphed it into Legally Speaking, because what we wanted to do was to capture more of the general legalistic things that impact our people, to include land. In land, we would be limited there, so we morphed it into becoming Legally Speaking. And of course, she did a wonderful job, as she always does in whatever she puts her hands to. And people continue to ask about that feature up to today and so on. I'll get called, especially people who depending on that kind of advice from her and so on and so forth. But we know that, duty calls, and she had to be on the campaign hosting in a big way down there in Northeast St. Elizabeth. And thank God she ward off the challenge and basically came home with a victory, and she is now the Member of Parliament elect for the wonderful people down there in Northeastern St. Elizabeth. But what I want to talk about is the way that both newly minted parliamentarian conducted themselves last night, and that program, and the commitment that they made in terms of not just being bench warmers there, as persons who have sat in those two constituencies before did. I don't recall any of those two former MPs who are now hosted who even move a private member's motion or rise on their feet. I am not saying that they did, but it may be so far and few in between, or not at all. I certainly don't remember. They also talk about the attendance of Parliament, and for me that is big. They drew a line in the sand and they said, listen, they will be present in the parliament because they will be going there to basically participate in the legislative agenda as it relates to the betterment of people in their in Jamaica, and in particular their respective constituency. And you know, it was really, really heartwarming for me to see persons of those caliber elected last week Wednesday. What they also show was gumption, and they are showing determination. And guess what? They are not afraid. And I'm certainly looking from some fireworks from Isaac Buchanan and some fireworks from Zalika Jess, the young lady that is called Little Portia. So Little Portia, Zalika Jess, the people are expecting a lot from you. That's Conrad's take.